Well, something big is happening. A firestorm has been ignited on the right after Douglas Murray insisted on Joe Rogan's podcast that experts should have greater weight in the cultural conversations of our time. And it got heated when libertarian Dave Smith reminded him of how the expert class has lied through their teeth about so much for the last 10 years. Just take a look at this before I give you the full picture.
I'm still slightly bemused about this move from I'm an expert on this and I have views to I'm a comedian.
I've never claimed to be an expert on anything.
This is the problem, Joe. I mean, if somebody
Wait a minute,
says
you have to claim to be an expert on something to have an opinion on something?
No, you don't have to be. You don't have to be. But
So what's
this is
the
like,
issue?
I'm not a historian, but I'm pumping out history.
But wait a minute,
I'm
what
not
about
an expert,
just-
but I'm talking all the time about
But
this
you're not
thing.
even talking about specifically on what he just said.
No, I'm saying this is my point about this. You say I'm not an expert.
So what's the solution? To not talk about it?
No, it's to have more experts around.
Well, the expert
To
class
hear-
hasn't done a great job,
I know,
man. This is follow the science.
absolutely,
Yeah, but you know what?
absolutely, I agree
so fine.
with
So
that.
during,
I just said to you, I agree with that.
Right, I know.
But
so
one of the
Douglas,
problems
during
is-
all of
Fire away.
I will put my track record against any of the expert class on COVID. I'm glad to do that. So should I have just shut up? Should I have shut up by opposing lockdowns and opposing vaccine mandates
No.
and
Well,
talking
that
about
was
the
the
lab leak
argument at the
theory?
time. You realize
that's
that,
the
right?
entire argument that you're making. Let the experts handle this.
No.
You're not an expert.
You're
you're right. I was just a comedian.
You're wildly not listening to what I'm saying. I think you have to take. I think we should agree, perhaps, on the following: that one major thing can break down in front of your eyes, or many major things, and it does not mean that every single one of the sewer gates should be lifted. Okay?
Yeah, I get that
But
point.
Right.
who's saying it should be?
I'm saying this is a chatter on what is part of our side at the moment, is that a lot of the sewer gates are being lifted, sometimes by people who know that they're doing it, sometimes by people who don't, sometimes by people who say, I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there. But at the very least, there's some damn hygiene that should be required, isn't there?
Now, let me admit, I'm a big fan of Dave Smith, have been for a long time. I am also a fellow libertarian. But let me try and steelman Douglas Murray's point here and draw some borders around it. This world of new media and podcasting is a reactionary rebellion against these so-called experts in the mainstream discourse that have lied to the American people for decades, especially the last 5 years. So yes, while I don't like the term expert in this context, there is something to be said about more learned opinions getting proper airtime so that our cultural conversations don't just devolve into a postmodern subjective soup where every person has their own version of the truth and history. But Douglas, the whole method of working that out is to have open-ended conversations that people like Joe Rogan have. Because zoom out and Douglas's own point dissolves. There's libertarian comedian and commentator Dave Smith, who's not claiming to be an expert, pitted against someone like Douglas, who does call himself an expert on the Middle East war debate, even though he has a bachelor's degree in English, for a 3 full hour conversation on the world's biggest podcast. Why not take the opportunity to do as you say? Because for some reason it kept evolving into more appeals to authority and personal experience from Douglas Murray, like in this example next.
Have you been to the crossing points?
No,
When were you last there at all?
I've never been.
You've never been?
Well, am I not allowed to talk about it now? I've never been to. Have you ever been to Nazi Germany? Are you allowed to have feelings about them?
You can't time travel, but you can.
Well, right.
But you can travel.
Okay, but so what? So what's the point? Like,
No,
okay.
I find that
Lots
very...
of people have been there and agree with me, and lots of people have been there and agree with you.
Yeah, but
so I
if
don't
you're
know
going to
what the...
spend a year and a half talking about a place, you should at least do the courtesy of visiting it.
all right. I just think this is a non-argument.
You don't
but
think?
Okay. No, I think it's a non-argument.
But if you're an
Well, you have to go and touch the ground to
No,
be
I
able to
think
talk
you have
about
to
it?
see. I think it's a good idea to see stuff, particularly if you
okay.
spend a career talking about something. Yes. I have a journalistic rule of trying never to talk about a country even in passing unless I've at least been there.
Okay, then that's a noble journalistic goal for Douglas Murray, but since we live in the 21st century with a wealth of information coming out of those places in real time, he can't shut the door to conversation on billions of people just because they haven't physically gone to a specific place in the world. I don't know, it just reeks of the lived experience argument we've seen on the left, and It's just wrong.
What's all the appeal to authority stuff? I mean, what you have to be an expert, or
no, I think
what exactly
authority
makes
matters.
you
I
an
think
expert?
authority matters, and I think that if you just throw a lot of shit out there and then say I'm not interested in the alternative views on this, and particularly when it's a counter narrative that is wildly off. And when you get people, look, I just feel we should get it out straight away. I feel you've opened the door to quite a lot of people who've now got a big platform who have been throwing out counter-historical stuff of a very dangerous kind.
Besides, let's not forget that none of this actually takes on anything that Dave said to begin with, and you should demand that of Douglas Murray, even as someone like me that likes a lot of things he says on various cultural issues. It's a wasted opportunity to say the least, and that even Joe Rogan sarcastically mocked it in his next episode with Tim Dillon is very telling.
I wouldn't
Wait
make
a minute
it.
before you say that.
Have you been there?
Right, that's a good point.
You haven't been?
By the way, how is he in all these wars? Can I just go to wars? By the way, how are you allowed to just go to wars? Is
you
that the way
you should at least
Can you just
have the
go to war?
courtesy of going there.
Can I just
It's just far below Douglas Murray's stature to be making an argument like this to begin with. That's like saying Katy Perry's opinion on astronomy should carry more weight than Neil deGrasse Tyson because she took a 10-minute trip to space on Blue Origin. It just doesn't make sense. And then I was surprised when Jordan Peterson said something in his latest appearance on Rogan that's also interesting to say the least about what's happening to the rights online ecosystem.
Because I've been watching these right-wing, they're not right-wing, these psychopathic types manipulate the edge of the conservative movement for their own gain.
Right.
And a lot of that's cloaked in anti-Semitic guys. There's plenty of anti-Semitism on the left too, by the way. So it's not unique to the right.
Well,
but
particularly now.
Yes, particularly now.
Right.
And so, you've let your curiosity guide you, your curiosity and your desire for knowledge, this quest, you've let that guide you as a podcaster. And by the way, I'm trying to work through exactly the same sort of thing. How do you know, given your radical increase in stature over the last 10 years, how do you know when your curiosity and even your skepticism about the fact that things aren't the way that people say they are, because that's certainly been demonstrated in the last 10 years, how should anyone decide what guardrails to put up? Like, what do you look for? Do you have a conceptual system worked out for that? Like, because
what do you mean? In what way?
Well,
how do I look for in terms of people to talk to? How do I look for
because
subjects
you
to
have
talk
this
about?
insanely immense platform,
Yeah.
and you're inviting people onto it. And you said to Douglas, and I know this to be true, that you're not really thinking about the outcome exactly. You're thinking about, this is an interesting person to talk to, and I'd
Yes.
like to go on that quest.
So just help me understand this. What Jordan calls the psychopathic edge is basically the counterculture that the majority is rejecting. But the thing about a counterculture is that it can eventually become the dominant culture, which is kind of what's happening with this last election. And it was exactly Joe Rogan's desire to engage with that edge that even led to the rise of countercultural figures back in 2017, like Jordan Peterson when he was taking heat from basically everywhere, including the media and the education system. I admit it's a messy problem to untangle, so let me know in the comments what you think about this, because I think this is a conversation that the world of online media really just needs to have eventually.